Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And today Thomas is very excited, obviously, full of energy. And today we are talking about start creating.
Right. So we're kind of on this theme of what to do about anxiety. And last week we did Stop Imagining.
Correct.
And the thesis of that one was that it's our human tendency to imagine all the bad things that are going to happen and get it in your mind that something bad is going to happen. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
All right. And today I want to talk about, when you stop imagining, you got to, part of the ability to stop imagining is to put something else in your brain that isn't a doom and gloom scenario.
Right. So Stop Imagining last week was about stopping the negative thoughts. If you haven't listened to that yet, go back and listen to that episode before you listen to this one, because they're going to kind of link together. And so, one of the big things, if you do any personal development and you listen to any kind of Tony Robbins, the Steve Harvey, Brendan Burchard, any of those Jim Rohn, how many can I think of here? Mel Robbins, any of those kind of people. The one thing that you hear over...
Is Mel Robbins related to Tony Robbins?
No, she's not.
Oh.
One of the things you hear over and over and over is mindset, right? Having success, happiness, having what you want in life all begins with controlling your own mindset. And for most people, they're having those negative thoughts like we talked about in last week's episode. And so when you start to shift your mindset, one of the things that you can do to help keep those negative thoughts at bay is to start intentionally creating positive thoughts, because your mind cannot hold two thoughts at the same time.
Right.
So if you're filling your mind with positive direction, you're automatically pushing out the negative. And let's face it, divorce is at least one of the most, if not the very most negative event in your life.
Right.
I mean, you and I are 50 and 60 at this point, and I could say that it was...
I'm only 49.
You're 59, you mean?
No, I'm 49.
Oh, you're 49. That will make me 39.
That's...
So, if you can, like I said, Thomas and I have both been through, he knocked me off my thought process here, but we've both been through it. And we know that at least to this point in our lives, it has been one of the most negative. I also talk about having lost my mom, but in some ways that wasn't quite as hard because it's not a rejection. Somebody dying is not the same as somebody out and out rejecting you. That's one of the things that makes divorce so painful and so negative.
Right. So how do you decide what to put into your head? And my thought, if you don't mind my starting.
Go right ahead.
Okay. My thought is to do some introspection. And, it's not just about having 50-50 or having extra time with your kids or
more money.
I think that you have to decide for yourself what needs do those things fulfill. You have to take a step back and look at it. And to do that, you need an inventory, so to speak, of your goals and values. Right. I believe that, and a lot of people will back me up on this, that people are about as happy as they make up their minds to be.
Am I people that's supposed to back you on it?
Yes. Back me up on this, or
Okay.
I'll kick your...
Yes, that's correct. I mean, happiness to a large extent is a choice. If you just wait for all the stars in your life to align before you will let yourself be happy, I have news for you. You will never be happy.
Right. And if you say you have supervised visits,
Yeah.
just to get a extreme, you're better off radiating a joy and happiness about your life to your kids.
Right.
That's going to lead to a better outcome.
Right.
Especially when the visitation monitor sees that you're great with your kids.
Right.
But, what do kids want? They don't, kids don't want to be probed for information about the other parent.
Right.
They don't want to have negative, angry thoughts thrown at them all the time. No,
Right.
mostly they want to play.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
They want to be happy.
And they want to be happy and they want to have fun.
They want to have fun, right?
Right.
I mean, you and I go through this dynamic even as adults sometimes, to where it's sort of like one of us will be in a bad mood and will be almost like wanting to demand the other person's attention. But the irony of that is the other person doesn't really want to give you their attention, because think about it. Do you want to be around somebody who's grumpy and irritable and all those things? No, you like being around people who are fun and upbeat and happy and all that kind of stuff. And so the same is true for your children.
Yeah. It's kind of like the difference. Like if you want to say, I wanted my son to play basketball.
Right.
So I could say to him, I'm not going to say it. Right?
Son.
Son, you never play basketball with me.
Right.
And I'm really upset about that. And I'm tired of you not playing basketball with me. And
You're so selfish.
And you're just being very selfish. And I want you to come to the park and play basketball with me right now. Get in the car.
Yeah, he's not going to get up and go, "Oh yeah, that sounds like fun, Dad. Let's go."
Right, right. But if you go, "Wow, it's great weather outside. You know what I'd love to do? I'd love to go out and shoot some hoops. What do you think?"
Yeah.
And yes, no. But you have a better chance of getting a yes if you feel it's attractive.
Well, and boys are competitive too, so you could always add in, "Come on, I'm going to go wipe the floor with you."
Like that.
And then they're like, "No, you're not." Blah blah blah. But it's fun, it's banter, it's
right.
It's playful.
Right. And the ability to do that comes from a positive outlook.
Yes.
You have to have a positive outlook, and you may have supervised visits, or you may have not the parenting plan you want,
or you may have an evil, wicked teenager.
But here's the ultimate question, and the ultimate key to, you didn't know you were going to find out the ultimate key to happiness.
Ultimate.
This is it. But happy people know what their own values and goals are.
Right.
Happy people know what makes them happy.
Right.
And so they try to do those things. That makes sense.
Right.
Right. I like to surf and play guitar, and I like to hang out with Tammy, and not necessarily in that order.
So far, you still like to hang out with me.
Right.
But what happens is, and I just can almost hear the listeners as we speak going, "Well, yeah, you don't know my ex."
Yeah. Right.
Then how they attack me and all the negative things they say and how they talk to my children and,
Right. Well, the episode is build something, right? Or
right.
What was it? Build, create? What was it?
Start creating.
Start creating.
Good thing we have notes on these things.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, no, we don't have any notes. No notes.
The notes are in my head.
The notes are in Tammy's head. But you want to, after you've figured out what your values and goals are, you have to start building something. You have to start creating something. Because if you're trying to get your son to go play basketball with you, and they want to go with somebody who is fun to be with.
Right.
They want to go with somebody that seems to have their head on their shoulders and knows where they're going. And,
right.
And somebody that they admire and look up to.
Right. So if you are in a situation like Thomas said, which is that, like, he picked an extreme thing, right, to be on supervised visitation, and you go and your interaction with your kids are positive, guess what? Your kids are going to want to come back. And the supervision monitor is going to go, "Wow, what a great parent." And sometimes supervised visitation is necessary, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's the court having an abundance of caution until they figure out what's going on. And so particularly in those situations, you really want to, try to come across as positively as you possibly can. But this all goes into, what kind of parent do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to have? If you're coming at something, you can't create something positive from a negative place.
Right. So I like to start with the first habit from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People with Steve Covey, who wrote that book. He's passed away, but his son is also got some excellent stuff. But step 1 is to see the end from the beginning. So while you're stopping imagining, maybe it's a good idea to imagine and start to think, well, what, if my goals and values were in play, what would my life look like? What would I do? And it's helpful to know what the values and goals are. Some people don't know, and that's a good place to start introspection. But you want to have a vision. What's the Bible verse? Without the vision, the people perish, or something like that?
Without vision, people perish.
Yeah.
And I think this is interesting because we apply this a lot in business. I know a lot of people that know the theories around applying this to business, but you don't see people apply it as much to their personal lives. And the way it works in business, of course, is more tangible because we're talking dollars and cents, right? We're talking numbers. So if I say, I want to make $1 million this year, okay, then you chunk it down. Okay, how much do I have to make per month? I think it's like 83,000 and some change per month. Okay, if I have a product,
we're not making that much.
No, we're not. If I have a product that costs, $10,000, then how many of those do I have to sell, to make, $80,000 in a month? Okay, well, I've got to sell 8. Okay, well, that's on average 2 per week, so then how many leads do I need to have to generate and talk to in order to, statistically come out with 2 people that purchased the $10,000, product? And so that's how you go about it in business. You work backwards. You start with the end in mind.
Right.
And so same thing when you're going through this personally. And this is one of the things that Thomas and I talked about very, very early on, is one of the things that we had both done. And I will just say, I do not tend to be, I do not tend to be as inclined to do these types of exercises, but the divorce was such a crisis for me that I started getting some personal development, education and introspection at that point. And so one of the things that we talked about early on was how, he said he had sat down on the train and written about wanting to have a business and, what that would look like, and having a new mate, and, seeing his kids grow up and being present for them and all those things. And I did the same kind of thing of, what I wanted in a new mate. My kids were a little bit older, so my vision was a little bit different, and also wanting to have my own business. And that's something that we talked about very early on. And now fast forward 15 years later, it hasn't always been easy and it hasn't always come quickly, but I think that our life very much is on that path of where we wanted to go in the beginning.
Right.
But if you don't even have that vision,
right,
then you're just going wherever the road leads. You're not actually actively, intentionally creating that life.
Right. And I'm a day planner guy, and I have this day planner. I'll show it to the folks that are watching on video. And in the back of it, I have some writing that I haven't looked at in a long time. It's essentially a mission statement. Okay. And my mission statement, just to summarize, has a lot to do with being a good husband to Tammy, to being a shepherding father to my boys with whatever time I have.
Right.
And it involves a commitment to excellence in our work, which I hope that we're providing here on the podcast.
Right.
And it involves a spiritual life that has its grounding in a Christian faith.
Right.
And that's not everybody out there, but I find that the Christian faith is a very good place to find that meaning. So what do I do? These things drive me to put certain things in my schedule. Like when the kids were young, they're 17 and 18 now, but when they were young, one of the things that was always on my calendar was bedtime stories.
Right.
And I would read challenging books to them.
Right. Or just the transition days. We had it in our calendar when the transitions were going to happen, what days they were here, what days they were with their mom, so that we could plan, so that as we were making our client appointments, when people would call, it's like we knew that those week off were more focused because, as I said, I had kids too, but my kids were here all the time and they were older, so it was different. But with your
Right.
kids, we made a point of having a heavier calendar on non-kid weeks and a lighter calendar on kid weeks so we could focus on them.
Right. And then on the financial side, as Tammy said, I've always wanted to be self-employed. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I've gotten my chance to do that. I've been working on this for a few years. If you look at our numbers, we're not quite at $1 million a year yet, but we're starting to build momentum.
Yes.
And I'm really looking forward to the future because it seems like for example, we crossed over 1,000 YouTube subscribers.
Yeah, a couple months ago.
Which is a big milestone. Of course, we've got all our friends out there in podcast land
Yes.
that are listening to us, presumably because they feel like they can get some value out of this.
Right.
But, essentially we're giving back. And I'm not waiting for my ex-wife to give me custody of the children before I create my world and create my business.
Right.
So
Right. And find some way to contribute.
Right.
Yeah. So if you're, once you get out of that negativity, like we talked about in the last episode, and you kind of get your focus shifted, then the goal from that point is not to just stay stagnant going through the motions day to day. And I know that, I end up working with a lot of women, at least. I don't have as much experience of speaking about this from the men's perspective, but for the women, at least, it's real easy with the hectic pace of our life and let's face it, now you're a single parent, right? Whether you're a mom or a dad, you're now a single parent. There's more pressure in regards to that because when you have the kids, you have them the whole time with no help, no nothing. When they're little, you can't even get in the car and run to the store for a gallon of milk, right? You got to call everybody in the kitchen sink with you. So it's real easy to get stuck in that day to day and kind of just treading water because you're surviving.
Or treading milk.
Yeah, treading milk too. I've had that experience. That's a whole nother podcast though.
Yeah.
But if you can get to the point to where you can carve out, small bits of time for yourself to be able to have that reflection and to get intentional, a lot of it is just getting it in your mind, because what happens is as you start to envision things, you will see more opportunities.
Right. Exactly.
That's how it works.
That's how your brain works.
Right. Because your brain is already getting in gear for that. It's kind of like how, if you've ever heard, I think it's Tony Robbins, particularly I heard say this, is like, you go and buy a black Cadillac and suddenly everywhere you look,
you see
there are black Cadillacs. And before you never noticed that there were any black Cadillacs. Why are you seeing them? Because that's where your brain is focused now, because that's the kind of car you have. And you don't have to tangibly have the thing in order for your brain to be engaged in thinking about it. When Thomas is, saying, okay, well, we're not at $1 million a year yet, but that's where our brain is focused on that goal. And so, so what happens is as things cross our path that are like a new idea or something to try or something we haven't thought of before, or something that can help us serve better, or serve at a higher level, or serve more people at once, or whatever that looks like, those things come across our path and it's like, oh, hey, let's try this. Whereas if we hadn't been engaged in that type of thinking at all, that probably would have just floated right on by us with no action on our part whatsoever.
Right. I'll give you another example. When I was I had a personal coach back when I was in the tent.
Business coach? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I had a coach.
Mm-hmm.
No, I had a life coach.
Oh, a life coach.
So
Okay.
You don't remember her?
I do remember, but I couldn't remember if she was business or life, or I was just clarifying what.
Right.
I was still working a job at that point, so I wasn't worried about what you were doing out.
I was trying to
figure
figure myself out.
Yes.
So
Thomas was in the tent trying to figure.
So I had a life coach.
We had a tent in the backyard because we had 4 kids, 4 boys, no less, in the house. So yeah, the tent was the only place he could get any peace. So
right. So I was working from this book. I think it was called The 11th Element.
Oh, that
I'm
sounds familiar.
I'm not sure what it was, but essentially what the 11th element taught was what you do is you write letters to your subconscious,
Huh.
and you said this, this is what I want, this is my vision, and the subconscious, you ask your subconscious to provide this for you, okay, and then you take the letters, you put them in a box, and then every morning you open the box and you read your letters, okay, and then you start your day. And the idea behind that is that the way the subconscious works is it's like the black Cadillac example that Tammy gave. It's kind of like your subconscious goes to work on that stuff.
Right.
And, sooner or later, ideas pop into your head. And I've seen this. I saw this happen today. It's like, Tammy said, oh, it's Sunday and we need to record a podcast. And a lot of times I come to the podcast and I don't have any ideas. But this morning, it was like the ideas were just coming to me one after the other, and I couldn't stop them because I've been thinking a lot about the business and about the book that I'm writing and some other things. And that effort is a trigger to the subconscious to start giving you strategies that you wouldn't have thought of otherwise.
Right. It's the same thing as visualization, which essentially is using your imagination, which I said to Thomas, we should call this Start Imagining. And he's like, well, I want it to be more concrete than that. But visualization is something actually that people who are very wealthy, very successful, they tend to start teaching their kids this very, very early on of, visualizing, actively closing your eyes and actively visualizing what you want your life to look like, what your future will be. And not just, one of the things about it is I think it's a little bit easier to envision that you're like almost watching it in a movie, but to take it one step further and to imagine yourself in it, in the movie, and imagine yourself viewing it from the eyes that you will have when you actually succeed in it.
You can still call it Start Imagining. Sorry.
And when you do that, and a really good time to do that is right before bed and right when you wake up. And I don't want to get like too deep on this, but your brain waves change at different points and all this, and
there's science. This is science.
You can read. You can go and read about a lot of this stuff, and I don't want to say it wrong.
What do they call it? Neuroplasticity or neuro something?
I don't know, but I don't want to get too deep. Yeah. But anyway, your brain waves change when you fall asleep. As you're falling asleep, you go into different stages, and when you're waking up, you're in different stages. When you're still in that kind of groggy, I just woke up feeling, and your subconscious is more accessible during that little period than it is.
Your subconscious is really grumpy
when you're fully awake. My subconscious is grumpy whether I'm awake or asleep. It doesn't really matter. So, but if you can do these visualization exercises before bed and or when you first wake up, what happens is just what Thomas said. Your brain will start to go to work on those things, and you'll have ideas and things come to you. And this is why you hear people say, don't worry about the how. They always tell us, okay, like our goal is to earn $1 million a year. You don't worry about the how. So your goal is to get 50-50 of your kids, let's say, okay? Or 70-30 or whatever you're trying to do. Or your goal is to find a job earning this much money so you can support yourself without struggling. Or your goal is to find the new perfect affordable housing for you and the kids to live in, or whatever divorce scenario you're dealing with. If you can take that and start visualizing yourself having that, right. Visualizing yourself having the amount of parenting time you want, living in a nice little affordable place that you want, making the amount of money that you want,
right.
Then your brain starts to go to work on that. And you may not have any clue. You may say, I'm on supervised visitation. I don't know how in the world I will ever get to 50-50 parenting time. But you don't worry about the how. You worry about focusing on the outcome. And then your brain, your subconscious goes to work on the how.
You'll wake up and you'll have an idea.
Right.
Like a lot of times people don't realize that they have value that they can deliver the marketplace.
Right.
And, when we were first getting into coaching, it's kind of like, why would anybody listen to me? I don't, but the thing is, with all the experience we've had with our own divorces and then watching other people, we have developed some strategies that really work.
Right.
And so we have been able to kind of take that kind of negative thing that we both went through and turn it into something positive.
Right.
And
So not just turn it into something positive, turn it into something that helped us create the life that we want.
right, exactly. And it's a wonderful thing because now we're reaching the stage where the kids are more independent and we're dealing with grandkids and all that stuff. And it's coming. By bits and pieces, it's all coming together.
Right.
And we want to be able to travel, and we have dreams.
Right.
And what if? And I'm not saying that every one of you should go into divorce coaching, but
No.
there's definitely room in our space. What we do is pretty unique, actually.
Yeah, I think so. But
Mhm.
everybody, one of the things, like, we've been to a lot of business conferences and things, and one of the things they say is everybody has something to offer.
Right.
And maybe you don't want the stress of owning your own business and you're happy to be an employee and go to work every day and
Right.
whatever that is for you. I mean, I think we all have a desire to make enough money to not have to struggle. I think that's a pretty common thing. And so just finding what those things are for you. Maybe your kids are older and you're single and you don't want to be tied down and you want to travel and you want to experience things, or you want to be able to spend more time with your parents because they're aging, or you want to be, whatever that is. Again, going back to starting with imagining yourself in that space will automatically put your brain to work on how you can start creating that tangibly in your life.
Right. And when you're thinking about those things, it's impossible for the human mind. I read this somewhere, so it must be true. It's impossible for the human mind to think of two things at the same time.
I said that at the beginning of the podcast.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Maybe that's where I heard it.
Clearly, he wasn't thinking about what I was saying when I said it.
I was
but-
trying to think of what I was going to say next.
Yeah, I think it's Brian Tracy who I've heard say that that's another
No, but I've
self-development
heard-
person, is the brain cannot hold, or maybe it's Bob Proctor. I don't know. It was
Right.
one of them. The brain cannot hold two thoughts at the same time. So if you are intentionally thinking positive thoughts, your brain won't be able to think
Right.
negative thoughts.
It's kind of like when you're trying to text and drive. Now, I know none of you do that, but if you ever tried
Never.
doing it, it's kind of like, it's not that you can drive and text at the same time. What you're doing really is shifting your attention back and forth.
Right.
From the road to the phone, to
Rapidly.
the road,
Yes.
to the phone, the road, the phone, road, phone. Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. And the reason why this is good is because you're sitting around imagining all the horrible things that are going to happen at the hearing in a month.
Right.
That are going to happen, or at the FCS or what have you. And if you're thinking about your future in a positive way, two things are going to happen. First of all, you're going to do better in that hearing because
Right.
you're going to look like somebody that has direction.
Right.
Okay. But as a side benefit, you're unable to think about that that dream life that you have and think about the disaster in your case at the same time.
Right. And this also comes into play, like just dealing with co-parenting issues. Like so many times I get a mom that's so focused on what he's doing or what his new mate is doing or what,
Right.
all these different things. And we sort of become consumed with it to where the fear and the anxiety around, the amount of power we imagine that person having becomes almost debilitating for some people.
Right.
Like I have had coaching clients where literally the thoughts about the other person have
They're
brought
crushing them. Yeah.
Yeah, the anxiety and the stress of it is crushing them. So again, the way that you stop those things is by first taking your focus off of them, having your boundaries, communicating in a way that sort of pushes them out to the edge, so to speak, where they're not the center of your mindset.
Right.
And then shifting your focus into something positive for you that creates that helps you to start creating the life that you want. I promise you what happens is anxiety goes away.
Right.
Stress goes away.
Right.
Happiness increases.
Right.
Your sense of self-worth increases.
Right.
All those different things.
Women are attracted to you.
Or men, whichever
you're looking for.
Whichever one you're looking for. Yeah, either way. And you become this happier, more positive, more upbeat person. And Thomas is correct. You're going to attract that type of person in your life. You can't be walking around with stress, anxiety, and negativity and attract a positive mate or positive friends or positive people into your life.
You could have all this.
Lord help us all.
No, but it's good. We got a good thing here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good, and we have a mature relationship, and we have a good marriage, and we have strong relationships with our children and our grandchildren. So we have our family life,
right.
And the money is good right now, but not great, and it's going to be great because it used to.
Because we're imagining it.
We've already gone from it really sucks to it's good.
Yeah, that's true. It did really suck for a while,
So now we're going to go from it's good to it's great, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And again, like all that started with just being in that very, very low place and having to, shift your mindset, to get you headed in that direction.
Absolutely.
So. All right. So thanks for joining us. If you're listening to us on the podcast, don't forget to rate and review us. Also subscribe so that you find out when new episodes are released each week. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like this video and also subscribe so you get notified as new videos come out each week. And we'll talk to you soon.
See you then.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.